The city lights blurred into golden streaks outside the car window, but Lana could barely focus. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed the fabric of her dress for what felt like the 100th time. Tonight was supposed to be perfect, a celebration of 10 years of marriage. Instead, in precisely 47 minutes, her entire world would shatter. "You seem nervous," Matthew said, his voice smooth as silk. His hand rested on her knee, the same hand that had held hers through laughter and tears, the same hand that had once felt like home. But tonight, that hand felt different, like a steel trap, tightening around everything she loved. Lana forced a smile. "Just excited," she lied. "It's not every day we celebrate our 10th anniversary." Matthew smiled back, but there was something lurking beneath it, something cold. As their sleek black car pulled up to the Wellington, an exclusive London restaurant reserved for the elite, Lana took a deep breath. Crystal chandeliers glowed inside, casting long, elegant shadows over polished mahogany floors. The scent of aged wine and expensive cologne filled the air as they entered. Matthew's family was already waiting in the private dining room. His sister, Susan, rushed forward, her perfume cloying and suffocating. "The golden couple," she declared, stepping back to admire Lana's dress. "You look absolutely radiant, darling." Lana barely heard her. Her gaze had locked onto Emily, her 16-year-old daughter, sitting stiffly in the corner of the room. Emily was usually poised, confident, sharp as a dagger in a world of silk gloves. But tonight she was fidgeting with her napkin, her knuckles white. Lana moved toward her. "Something wrong, sweetheart?" Emily barely had time to open her mouth before Matthew clinked his glass. "I'd like to make a toast," he announced. The room fell silent. 10 years ago, I married this beautiful woman," he began, his voice dripping with a false warmth. "And tonight I think it's time for some honesty." Lana's stomach twisted. There was something in his tone, something cruel, something that made her spine turn to ice. He raised his glass. "Lana, you've been a wonderful wife. But as they say, all good things must come to an end." The words sliced through the room like a knife. A hush fell over the guests. Lana's pulse roared in her ears. "I'm filing for divorce," Matthew said, his lips curling into a smirk. The floor felt like it was tilting beneath her. She barely heard the gasps. She barely registered the murmurs of shock. But then he turned toward Emily. His hand landed on her shoulder. She flinched. And then, "Emily and I have fallen in love." The words sent a ripple of horror through the room. Lana felt like she'd been punched in the gut, like the oxygen had been sucked from her lungs. The disbelief should have been universal. It should have been met with outrage, with fury. But instead, something far worse happened. Susan smiled. She actually smiled. Raising her glass, she said softly, "To new beginnings." Lana's vision tunneled. This wasn't shock. This wasn't outrage. This was acceptance. Matthew's entire family looked upon this grotesque revelation not with disgust, but with knowing, with approval. Lana turned to Emily, really looked at her, at the tightness in her shoulders, the fear in her wide, tear-brimmed eyes. This wasn't love. This was monstrous. "Emily," Lana whispered, her voice as soft as breaking glass. "Come here, baby." Emily didn't hesitate. She nearly leapt from her chair, her body trembling as she grabbed Lana's hand. Matthew's smirk faltered. "Now, Lana," he said, straightening his tie. "Let's not be dramatic. Stop talking." Lana's voice was ice. The room stilled. "My 16-year-old daughter, Matthew?" she asked, her tone so sharp it could cut glass. "She's very mature for her age," Matthew replied smoothly. "And these things, well, they just happen." The horror of it washed over her in waves. Not just the words, but the way his family nodded in agreement, as if this was simply a matter of convenience, as if Matthew hadn't just announced something vile in the middle of an anniversary dinner. Emily was shaking beside her. And then, something inside Lana clicked. 10 years. 10 years of unexplained business trips. Of hushed phone calls. Of documents swiftly hidden when she entered rooms. It all clicked into place. A slow, deliberate smile curled across Lana's lips, the kind of smile that promises war. "Well," she said, her voice steady, cool, unshaken. "I suppose I should thank you." Matthew blinked. "What?" "For making this so public." For the first time that evening, Matthew looked uneasy. "Lana, what are you?" She gathered her purse, her grip on Emily unrelenting. "You really should have checked what your stepdaughter was doing all those years she spent helping you in your home office." Matthew froze. Behind them, Susan inhaled sharply. The room rippled with unspoken panic. Lana turned on her heel, dragging Emily with her. Matthew's chair scraped violently against the floor as he stood. "Lana, wait." but she was already gone. The moment they stepped into the cold London air, Emily turned to her, her breath hitching. "Mom," she whispered, voice thick with unshed tears. "I have everything. Everything he did. Everything he said. All of it." Lana pulled her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I know, baby." Her voice was steel. "I know." She had raised a smart girl. Matthew thought he was in control. He thought he had won. But while he had been spinning his web, they had been building something else, something far more dangerous. A case that would destroy him. As they slid into a black taxi, Lana cast one final glance through the restaurant window. Matthew stood there, his face twisted in rage. He had played his hand. But he had forgotten one thing. Never, ever underestimate a mother protecting her child. Because the game had just begun. And Lana intended to win. The sky was a heavy, suffocating gray as Lana and Emily stepped out of the taxi, their breath misting in the cold air. The streets stretched out in eerie silence, too still for comfort, like the city itself was holding its breath. Lana kept a firm grip on Emily's wrist, her mind racing through the events of the past few hours. They had rattled a monster, but worse, there were bigger monsters hiding in the dark. Emily shivered beside her, holding her laptop close to her chest, her fingers digging into the plastic. "Mom," she whispered, her voice barely carrying over the hush of the street, "what if he comes after us?" Lana didn't answer immediately. Instead, she scanned the quiet, empty roads, the shadows that stretched between the streetlights. There was a feeling, something shifting, something unseen but very much there. "He already has," she finally said. She pulled out her phone, her fingers quick and sure as she sent a message to Royal. "We need to move fast. Her lawyer would be ready. He always was." As they approached their building, an unease settled over Lana. The front door hung slightly ajar. Not enough to notice at first glance, but she had locked it. She remembered locking it. She grabbed Emily's arm and took a slow step back. A movement in the hallway beyond the door. Subtle, a flicker in the dim lighting. Someone was inside. Watching. Waiting. Lana didn't hesitate. She turned sharply, her voice low but urgent. "Back in the taxi. Now." Emily barely had time to react before Lana was pulling her away, back towards the street, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear the sound of their footsteps. They ducked into the waiting taxi, Lana slamming the door shut. "Drive," she ordered. The driver, startled but not about to argue with the look in her eyes, pulled away from the curb. As they sped down the street, Lana chanced one last glance at their building. A shadow moved past the window. Someone had been waiting for them. Emily trembled beside her, pressing her forehead against the window. "Where are we going?" Lana exhaled. "To Royal. We don't have time to play it safe anymore." Emily didn't argue. She just nodded, gripping her laptop even tighter. By the time they reached Royal Ramirez's office, the city was beginning to stir. The lawyer's building loomed ahead, dark windows reflecting the early morning light. He was already waiting when they arrived, standing by the door, his expression unreadable. Inside, Lana wasted no time. She pulled out the flash drive, dropping it onto his desk. "He's already making moves." Royal plugged it in, scanning through the files as Emily stood beside her mother, her jaw tight. "He wiped Mom's laptop remotely," she muttered. Royal's expression darkened. "That means he's scared." Lana leaned forward, gripping the edge of the desk. "Can we still bury him?" Royal didn't answer immediately. Instead, he clicked open a folder. The screen flooded with numbers, offshore accounts, bank transfers, blackmail, bribery. Emily gasped. Lana's breath hitched. One file, buried among the others, stood out. Renfield Manor. Royal clicked it open. A list of names scrolled across the screen, accompanied by dates, amounts, transactions that had nothing to do with embezzlement. Lana's stomach twisted. She recognized some of those names. Politicians. CEOs. Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. "Mom, what is this?" Royal exhaled, slow and controlled. "It's not just fraud, Lana. This is a trafficking ledger." Everything in the room went still. Lana stared at the screen, bile rising in her throat. This wasn't just about Matthew. This was bigger. Much bigger. And now they had proof. A knock at the door shattered the silence. Emily flinched. Royal exchanged a look with Lana before pulling open a drawer and slipping something into his jacket. Then he rose, moving to the door. He opened it a crack. A woman stepped inside. Lana's stomach clenched. Susan. She wasn't smiling this time. "Oh, Lana." Her voice was sickly sweet, but her eyes, cold and calculating. "You really don't know what you've gotten yourself into." She turned to Royal, her lips curving into something almost amused. Mind if we have a little chat? Lana clenched her fists, the weight of the moment settling in her bones. The game had changed. And the hunter was no longer Matthew. The room felt smaller. The air heavier. Lana's pulse drummed against her ribs as she watched Susan step inside, slow and deliberate, like a predator entering its own den. Royal didn't move, didn't blink, his body tense in a way that spoke of readiness. Emily stiffened beside her mother, her fingers curling into tight fists at her sides. Susan closed the door behind her with a soft click. Lana's eyes flicked toward Royal's desk, to the open laptop screen still showing the files. Susan had seen it. She knew. And yet she was smiling. You always were clever, Lana, Susan mused, her heels clicking against the floor as she took a slow step forward. But I have to admit, this is impressive. Lana's throat tightened. What do you want? Susan's smile didn't waver, but there was something dangerous behind it now. Oh, Lana, don't you get it? She tilted her head, her eyes gleaming with something unreadable. I'm not here to threaten you. Emily let out a bitter laugh, though her voice shook. Really? Because breaking into our flat, leaving a picture of me in my bedroom window, wiping my mom's laptop, that all seems very threatening. Susan turned her gaze to the teenager, studying her as if she were something fragile. You're sharp, she admitted, but you're young. You don't understand the weight of what you've done. She exhaled, shaking her head. This isn't just about Matthew anymore. It never was. Royal finally spoke, his voice cold. Then what is it about? Susan's smile thinned. Power. Control. Survival. She glanced at the laptop, nodding toward the screen. You found Renfield Manor, didn't you? Lana's jaw locked. She said nothing. Susan gave a soft laugh, shaking her head. I was afraid of that. She moved then, quick and fluid, reaching into her coat pocket. Royal's hand disappeared into his jacket. Emily inhaled sharply. Lana braced herself. Susan pulled out a flash drive. She held it between two fingers, turning it slightly so the light glinted off its surface. This, she said, voice steady, is your way out. Lana didn't reach for it. Neither did Royal. Susan sighed. Lana, you don't understand. You think Matthew is the enemy. You think exposing him will end this. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. But the people behind Renfield? The ones who own men like my brother? Her lips curved into something sad, almost pitying. They don't lose. Lana swallowed hard. She wasn't sure if it was fear clawing up her throat or fury. I'm not afraid of him, she said. Susan's eyes darkened. Then you're a fool. A tense silence settled between them, thick and suffocating. And then Susan placed the flash drive onto Royal's desk. There are names on here, she murmured. Names you don't want to cross. If you take this to the police, if you leak even one piece of it, you won't just be putting yourself in danger. Her gaze flickered to Emily. You'll be signing her death warrant. Lana's fists clenched. Royal exhaled sharply, looking between the two women. And what exactly do you expect us to do? Susan smiled again, slow and deliberate. Disappear. Lana froze. Susan tapped the flash drive. This is leverage. It's proof. Not enough to bring them down, but enough to make them hesitate. Take it. Leave the city. Leave everything. Lana felt like the ground beneath her was shifting, the rules of the game changing too fast for her to keep up. She had spent months gathering evidence, preparing for war. But this wasn't just Matthew's corruption. This was something bigger. Something much, much worse. And Susan was telling her to run. Lana's eyes flickered to Emily. Her daughter. Her reason for everything. Emily wasn't looking at Susan anymore. She was staring at Lana. And in her gaze there wasn't fear. There was determination. Mom, she said, voice steady. We're not running. Susan sighed, shaking her head. I was afraid you'd say that. She turned, reaching for the door handle. Then, almost as an afterthought, she paused. One last thing, she murmured. Lana waited. Susan's hand tightened around the knob. You were being watched tonight. But you already know that, don't you? She glanced over her shoulder, her expression unreadable. Lana said nothing. Susan's grip tensed. They weren't alone. A cold dread slithered down Lana's spine. Susan pushed the door open. You have one day, Lana? She stepped into the dimly lit hallway, her silhouette framed by the office lights. After that, the people watching you won't be playing games anymore. And then she was gone. For a long moment, no one moved. The room felt impossibly small, suffocating in the weight of what had just been said. Lana exhaled slowly, turning to Emily. Her daughter was already shaking her head. "We're not running," she repeated. Royal pinched the bridge of his nose. "Lana, I don't say this often, but she's right." He gestured to the flash drive. "Whatever's on here, whatever they don't want you to see. That's the key to everything." Lana stared at it. Then slowly she reached forward and picked it up. Something inside her shifted. She had spent years being lied to, manipulated, controlled. She wasn't going to be a victim anymore. She turned to Royal, her fingers tightening around the drive. "Then let's burn them all down." The night air outside was thick with tension, pressing in around Lana and Emily like an invisible force. The moment they stepped out of Royal's office, Lana could feel it. They were being watched. She didn't turn her head, didn't scan the streets. That would make it obvious she knew. Instead, she tightened her grip on Emily's wrist and walked with purpose, forcing each step to feel natural. Emily, however, wasn't as composed. "Mom?" she whispered, glancing toward the empty street. Lana didn't answer. She kept walking, her heart hammering against her ribs. Ahead of them, a taxi idled at the curb. She hadn't called for one. Her stomach twisted. Too convenient. Too easy. Emily hesitated, tugging at her mother's hand. "Something's wrong." Lana kept moving. "I know. Get in." Emily tensed but obeyed, sliding into the back seat. Lana followed, shutting the door behind them. The driver was silent, his face half hidden by the shadows. Lana forced a smile, gripping her purse tightly. 7th and Pine. The driver didn't respond. The hairs on the back of her neck rose. Then, slowly, he turned his head just enough for her to see the sharp curve of his smirk in the rearview mirror. Lana's stomach dropped. "You should have run," he murmured. Emily gasped as the doors locked. The taxi lurched forward, tires screeching against the pavement. Lana's pulse spiked. "No, not like this." She reached for the door handle, yanking hard. Nothing. Panic surged through Emily's voice. "Mom?" The driver chuckled, taking a sharp turn down an unfamiliar road. Lana's mind raced. Think. She had to do something. Fast. Her eyes darted to the front seat, to the divider between them and the driver. A small gap remained. Not much, but enough. Her hands moved on instinct. She reached into her purse, gripping the heavy steel pen Royal had handed her earlier. Not for writing. For defense. With a sharp inhale, she lunged forward, driving the pen through the gap, straight into the driver's forearm. He yelled, the car jerking wildly as blood spattered onto the dashboard. Emily shrieked as the vehicle swerved, slamming into a row of trash bins. Lana didn't hesitate. She elbowed the lock mechanism, yanking the door handle as hard as she could. This time it gave. Emily, run, The teenager scrambled out of the car just as the driver grabbed for Lana, his fingers snagging her wrist. She twisted violently, kicking him through the gap, her knee slamming into his temple. He grunted, his grip loosening just enough. Lana ripped free. She tumbled out onto the pavement, knees slamming against the cold concrete. Pain shot up her legs, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Emily grabbed her hand, yanking her up. Go, Gio. They bolted down the alley, the driver's furious cursing echoing behind them. Footsteps. More than one set. Lana risked a glance over her shoulder. 2 men. Not just the driver. They weren't alone. Emily's breathing was ragged. Mom, what do we do? Lana's mind spun, adrenaline drowning out the pain in her body. They needed cover. Now. Up ahead, a construction site loomed, steel beams stacked haphazardly behind a loose chain-link fence. Lana grabbed Emily's hand and veered right, crashing through the gap in the fence. The men behind them were fast. Too fast. Lana turned sharply, shoving Emily behind a stack of wooden pallets. Stay down. Emily's eyes were wide, terrified, but she nodded. Lana spun back just as one of the men grabbed for her. She dodged, barely. His fingers snagged her sleeve, yanking her back. She twisted, slamming her elbow into his ribs. He grunted but didn't let go. Lana snapped her head forward, driving it into his nose. A sickening crack. Blood sprayed across his face and his grip slipped. Lana wrenched free, stumbling backward. Then a gun cocked. The second man stood at the edge of the site, weapon raised. Lana's chest seized. Emily gasped. The man tilted his head, amused. That was impressive, he admitted, stepping closer. But you don't get to walk away from this. Lana clenched her fists, heart pounding. Think. Her gaze flickered to the scaffolding above them. The rusted bolts. The unsteady beams. She inhaled sharply. A plan. She just needed one good distraction. Emily, she said, voice low. Her daughter understood immediately. With a sudden shriek, Emily hurled a handful of gravel at the man's face. His gun wavered, asterisk just for a second. Asterisk. It was all Lana needed. She threw herself against the nearest beam, slamming it with all her weight. The entire structure trembled. The man's eyes widened. Then the scaffolding collapsed. Metal and wood crashed down in a deafening roar, swallowing their pursuer in a storm of debris. Emily grabbed Lana's arm, pulling her away from the chaos. They ran. Only when they were several streets away, panting and shaking, did they stop. Lana bent over, hands on her knees, lungs burning. Emily was gasping, her face pale. That was insane. Lana let out a short, breathless laugh. We're alive, aren't we? Emily looked up at her mother, eyes shining with something between fear and admiration. Mom? She whispered. What do we do now? Lana straightened, exhaling slowly. Her hands were still trembling. They weren't just fighting Matthew anymore. They were fighting something bigger, something that would never stop hunting them. And yet, Lana's grip tightened around the flash drive in her pocket. She met Emily's gaze. We finish what we started. The rain started as a drizzle, cold droplets pattering against the pavement as Lana and Emily pushed forward through the darkened streets. Every step felt heavier, every shadow a potential threat. Lana's pulse hadn't slowed since they'd escaped the collapsing scaffolding. They had barely made it out. Barely. She still felt the phantom weight of the gun aimed at her, the sickening sound of metal snapping as the structure came down. The men hadn't followed. But that didn't mean they were safe. Emily was silent beside her, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She clutched Lana's arm, fingers icy and trembling. Mom, she whispered, her voice hoarse. Who were they? Lana swallowed hard, pulling Emily into the shadows of a closed bookstore's awning. She needed a moment. To think. To breathe. The men had been professionals. Not some random thugs Matthew hired out of desperation. No, this was something else, something bigger. Lana pressed a hand to her temple, feeling the dull throb of adrenaline-fueled exhaustion creeping in. I don't know, baby, she admitted. But they knew exactly where we were. That means someone tipped them off. Emily stiffened. Susan? Lana's gut twisted. Had to be. She thought back to the text Susan had sent. Asterisk, we need to talk. Coffee. Just us girls? Asterisk, had it been a trap all along? The thought made her sick. She pulled out her phone, hesitating before opening her messages. The last thing she needed was Matthew tracking them through their devices. He had connections, power, money. If those men were his people, then... Her phone buzzed. Susan. Asterisk, we need to meet. It's not what you think. Please, Lana. You're in danger. Asterisk. Lana's breath caught. A trap? Or a warning? Asterisk. Emily peered over her shoulder, her eyes dark with uncertainty. What do we do? Lana stared at the screen. A part of her wanted to ignore it, to run. But that wasn't an option. Not anymore. Susan was involved. Deeply, and if she was reaching out like this, it meant something had changed. Lana exhaled, steadying herself. We meet her. Emily gaped at her. Are you serious? After? I know, Lana cut in, voice low. But if there's even the smallest chance she has information that can help us, we have to take it. Emily hesitated before nodding, though her shoulders remained tense. Where? Lana looked at the address Susan had sent. An old abandoned train station. Her stomach clenched. It screamed trap. But something inside her whispered that Susan was desperate. That she wasn't just leading them into another setup. She had to risk it. The station was on the outskirts of the city, a place time had forgotten. It had been shut down for years, left to decay beneath rusting beams and shattered windows. The second they stepped inside, Lana knew they weren't alone. Emily stuck close, her breathing shallow. The air smelled like damp wood and metal, the only sounds the occasional drip of water from the ceiling. Lana scanned the empty platforms, waiting. Then, a figure stepped from the shadows. Susan. She looked rough, her usually polished appearance was gone. Her hair was messy, her clothes wrinkled like she hadn't slept in days. Lana, she breathed, glancing around nervously. You actually came. Lana's jaw clenched. You set us up. Susan flinched. I didn't. I swear. She cut herself off, her hands trembling as she clutched at her coat. Listen to me. Matthew is dangerous. More dangerous than you realize. Lana folded her arms. Oh, I realize. No, you don't. Susan stepped closer, voice urgent. Those men? They weren't just sent by Matthew. They work for someone else. Lana stiffened. Susan licked her lips, eyes darting to the entrance like she expected someone to walk in at any moment. Matthew's been laundering money for people you do not want to cross. And they know you have proof. The cold dread that had settled in Lana's chest deepened. She had been so focused on destroying Matthew that she hadn't considered the bigger picture. Who? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Susan shook her head. I don't know their names. No one does. But they don't leave loose ends, Lana? A sharp crash echoed through the station. All three women froze. Susan's eyes widened in terror. Then, gunfire. The windows behind them shattered as bullets tore through the air. Emily screamed. Lana grabbed her daughter and dived behind an overturned bench, pulling Susan down with them. Run. Susan gasped, shoving Lana toward the side exit. No. Lana clutched Emily close, her heart hammering. Come with us. Susan shook her head. You don't get it, she hissed, eyes wild. They're not after me. They want you. A second round of bullets ripped through the wooden bench, splinters flying. Lana made a split-second decision. She grabbed Emily's wrist and bolted toward the emergency stairwell. Susan stayed behind, stepping out from their cover, right into the line of fire. The last thing Lana saw before she disappeared down the stairs was Susan raising her hands. Then a gunshot. Emily choked on a sob. Mom, she whimpered. Lana didn't stop. She couldn't. Tears burned her eyes, but she shoved them down. They reached the bottom of the stairs, bursting out into the freezing night air. No time to think. No time to mourn. The only thing that mattered now was survival. Because Susan had just sacrificed herself. And whoever was after them wouldn't stop until they were dead. The city was alive with distant sirens and flashing lights, but Lana and Emily moved like ghosts through the alleyways, hearts pounding, lungs burning. The gunshots from the station still echoed in Lana's head, Susan's desperate face the last thing she saw before they fled. Was she dead? There was no time to check. No time to look back. Emily gripped Lana's arm so tight it hurt, her breathing sharp and ragged. Mom, she choked out, her voice shaking. They? I know, baby. Lana didn't let her finish. The truth was unbearable. Susan had been right. This wasn't just about Matthew anymore. This was bigger. They reached an intersection, the glow of streetlights spilling onto the wet pavement. Lana's eyes darted around, scanning for threats. Nothing. Yet. A taxi slowed as it approached. Lana stepped forward, flagging it down. The driver, an older man with deep lines etched into his face, looked at them suspiciously. Two women, soaking wet, out of breath in the middle of the night. You need a ride? His voice was gruff. Lana hesitated. Trust no one. Before she could decide, headlights swung around the corner. A black SUV. Her stomach plummeted. They found us. Without thinking, she yanked open the taxi door and shoved Emily inside. Drive, she snapped. Now. The driver blinked. Where? Lana looked over her shoulder. The SUV slowed, its tinted windows unreadable, but she felt the danger crawling up her spine. Anywhere but here. The driver cursed under his breath and hit the gas, pulling into traffic just as the SUV sped up behind them. Emily clutched Lana's arm. They're following. Lana twisted to look. The SUV gained speed, weaving through the cars behind them. They were being hunted. Lana turned back to the driver. Lose them. The man scoffed. Lady, this isn't a damn movie. Do it. Something in her tone, pure raw desperation, made him obey. With a grunt, he gripped the wheel and swerved hard onto a side street, nearly clipping a parked car. The SUV followed. Lana's pulse thundered. Faster, she urged. The driver muttered a curse but pushed the speed limit. The buildings blurred past, neon lights streaking across the rain-slicked streets. The SUV stayed close, relentless. Then, the window behind them exploded. Emily screamed as glass shattered around them. Lana threw herself over her daughter, shielding her. The taxi driver let out a string of panicked swears, jerking the wheel wildly. Another shot. The front tire blew out. The taxi spun. Lana's stomach lurched as the world tilted, the car screeching across the asphalt. She barely had time to brace before they slammed into a metal barrier. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, Emily's ragged breath. Mom? Lana coughed, pain blooming in her ribs. I'm here, baby. The driver groaned in the front seat, dazed but alive. Then she heard it. The car door opening. Footsteps. They were coming. Lana's instinct screamed. She grabbed Emily's arm. "We have to run." Emily was trembling, her face pale with fear, but she nodded. Lana shoved the taxi door open, dragging Emily out. The SUV had stopped just feet away, its doors swinging open. 2 men stepped out. Dressed in black. No masks. No hesitation. Killers. One of them raised a gun. Lana didn't think. She ran. Emily's hand was in hers, their feet pounding against the pavement. The alleyway ahead was dark, a maze of fire escapes and dead ends. The gunman shouted behind them. A shot rang out. A streetlight above them burst, showering sparks. Emily yelped but kept running. Lana's mind raced. Then she saw it. A narrow gap between 2 buildings, barely wide enough to squeeze through. She yanked Emily toward it. "Go." Emily dove through. Lana followed, scraping her shoulder against the rough brick, forcing herself through. The gunman reached the alley just as they slipped out the other side. They had seconds. A delivery truck rumbled past on the street ahead. Without hesitation, Lana grabbed Emily and threw them both against the back of it, gripping the bumper. Emily gasped. "Mom?" "Hold on." The truck lurched forward. Just as the gunman rounded the corner. Their shouts were swallowed by the night as the truck carried them away. Lana clutched Emily tight, her heart hammering. They were alive. But for how much longer? This wasn't just about Matthew. Something bigger was coming. And they were running out of places to hide. The truck rumbled through the city streets, the vibrations rattling through Lana's bones as she clung to the metal bumper, Emily trembling beside her. The wind whipped against them, the scent of exhaust thick in the air. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The unspoken truth hung between them like a storm cloud. They had almost died tonight. The headlights of the black SUV had disappeared, but Lana knew better than to believe they were safe. Whoever had sent those men, whoever was pulling the strings behind Matthew's twisted game, wouldn't stop until she and Emily were silenced for good. Emily shifted, her hands gripping the truck's metal frame until her knuckles turned white. "Mom," she whispered, barely audible over the roar of the tires. "Where are we going?" Lana's mind raced. They couldn't go home. The police? No, Matthew had influence everywhere. The only reason they had gotten this far was because they had been careful. Because no one knew where they were, they had to keep it that way. "There's someone we can trust," Lana said finally. "An old friend." She prayed she was right. The truck took a sharp turn, nearly tossing them off the back. Lana's grip tightened, and she pressed her body against Emily's to keep her steady. Through the blur of city lights, she saw the next intersection coming up fast. They had to jump. "On my count," Lana murmured. 3, 2. The truck slowed as it approached a red light. "Now." She pulled Emily with her, and they hit the ground hard, rolling onto the wet pavement. Pain shot through Lana's shoulder, but she bit back a cry. Emily let out a sharp gasp but pushed herself up, scrambling to her feet. Lana grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the shadows of an abandoned storefront. They crouched behind a row of trash bins, catching their breath, scanning the street for any sign of the SUV. Nothing. For now. Lana pulled out her phone, her fingers shaking as she scrolled through her contacts. There was only one person who might help. Jared Cox. Matthew's former employee. The man who had been fired when he started asking too many questions. The man who had told them he kept copies of the financial records that Matthew thought he had destroyed. Lana hit the call button. It rang once. Twice. Then a voice. Low, urgent. "Lana?" Her stomach twisted. "Jared. We need help." Pause. "Where are you?" "Downtown. We can't stay in one place." Another pause. Then, "Meet me at the old shipping yard. Warehouse 17. Come alone." Lana hesitated. "Jared?" "Trust me," he said, his voice dead serious. "You have no idea how deep this goes." A click. The line went dead. Lana stared at the phone, her heartbeat thudding in her ears. Emily shifted beside her. "Mom?" Lana exhaled slowly. "We're going to meet Jared." Emily swallowed hard, glancing down the empty street. "And if it's a trap?" Lana shoved the phone into her pocket, checking the alley before stepping out. "Then we fight." The city loomed around them, dark and waiting. And somewhere in the shadows, something was coming. The night air clung to them like a second skin as Lana and Emily moved through the city's underbelly, their footsteps light, their hearts hammering. Every shadow felt alive, every passing car a threat. Lana's mind raced. The old shipping yard. Warehouse 17. Jared had been careful, cryptic. You have no idea how deep this goes. She already knew it was more than just Matthew. The SUV, the gunman, this wasn't just a bitter ex-husband lashing out. This was an organization. And Matthew was just one piece of a much larger, darker puzzle. Emily tightened her grip on Lana's hand as they reached the outskirts of the industrial district. The city's neon glow was behind them now, replaced by rusted fences, abandoned buildings, and the distant hum of the docks. A single street lamp flickered above the entrance to the shipping yard. It was quiet. Too quiet. Lana scanned the area. No sign of Jared. Her instincts screamed at her. Was this a mistake? Emily shivered beside her. I don't like this. Lana didn't either. But they were out of options. They slipped through a gap in the chain-link fence, their footsteps crunching against the gravel. The warehouses loomed ahead, massive and empty, their steel doors rusted from years of neglect. Warehouse 17 was at the far end, half hidden in the darkness. A single light glowed above its entrance. Lana took a breath, forcing her heartbeat to steady. Stay close, she whispered. Emily nodded. They crept forward, Lana's senses on high alert. The closer they got, the heavier the silence became. No wind. No distant traffic. Like the world was holding its breath. Lana reached the door first, pressing her back against the cool metal. She knocked once. Silence. Twice. Nothing. She reached for the handle. A noise behind them. Emily gasped. Lana spun, her body shielding her daughter. A shadow moved near the loading docks. Slow. Deliberate. Asterisk. Not Jared. Lana grabbed Emily's wrist. Inside. Now. She yanked open the warehouse door and shoved Emily through just as the first gunshot rang out. The bullet slammed into the metal doorframe, sparks flying. Lana threw herself inside, slamming the door shut and twisting the lock. Darkness swallowed them whole. Emily clung to her, breath shaky. Who was that? Lana didn't answer. She knew. The men from the SUV. And they weren't here to talk. A rustling sound came from deeper inside the warehouse. Lana's breath caught. They weren't alone. She grabbed Emily and backed up against a stack of crates, heart pounding in her ears. The air smelled like dust and rusted metal. A flashlight flicked on in the distance. Then another. They were inside. Emily gripped Lana's arm, her breath quick and shallow. Footsteps. Slow. Methodical. Lana reached into her jacket, fingers brushing against the cool metal of the pocket knife she had grabbed from Royal's office. It was small, but right now it was all she had. A voice echoed through the warehouse. Oh, amused. No need to hide, ladies. Lana's grip tightened. Another voice. We just want to talk. Lana's gut twisted. Liars. She could hear them spreading out, closing in. Emily's hand trembled in hers. Lana leaned in, whispering so softly it was barely a breath. When I tell you to run, you run. No looking back. Emily's eyes were wide. Mom? Do you understand? Tears brimmed in Emily's eyes, but she nodded. The footsteps grew louder. Lana tensed, her mind racing. She needed a distraction. Then, a voice. From the shadows, calm and familiar. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Jared. Lana's pulse spiked. There was a click, a safety being switched off. One of the flashlights turned, revealing Jared standing on an overhead platform, a gun aimed directly at the nearest gunman's head. The warehouse fell silent. Jared smirked. Didn't your boss tell you? I don't like being double-crossed. The gunman hesitated. Lana took her chance. She grabbed Emily and ran. Bullets erupted. Jared fired first, taking out one of the gunmen. The other shouted, diving for cover. Lana sprinted toward the back exit, dragging Emily with her. Jared's voice rang out. Go. I'll handle this. Lana didn't argue. She reached the metal door, shoved it open, and pulled Emily into the night air just as another round of gunfire exploded behind them. The cold wind hit them like a slap. Emily gasped, looking back. Jared. We can't help him now, Lana said, her chest heaving. We have to move. A car screeched to a stop near the alley. Lana's heart stopped. Another black SUV. The back door flew open. And Matthew stepped out. Lana froze, her blood running cold. Emily's hand tightened in hers. Matthew smirked, straightening his tie. Going somewhere, darling? Lana's stomach twisted. They had walked right into a trap. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows across the empty road as Matthew stepped forward, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement. Lana's pulse pounded in her ears, her grip on Emily tightening. Matthew looked almost amused, tilting his head as he took in their ragged appearance. You know, he mused, straightening his cuffs, I expected you to run, but I didn't think you'd be so predictable. Lana forced herself to stay still, to think. They were out in the open, vulnerable. The only thing keeping Matthew from grabbing Emily was the fact that he wanted her to break first. She wouldn't give him that satisfaction. Matthew's gaze flicked behind them, to the warehouse where gunfire had erupted just seconds ago. Jared always was a reckless idiot, he sighed. A shame really. But you. I expected more from you, Lana. Lana swallowed the bile rising in her throat. You don't get to talk to me like you know me. He laughed, low and smug. Darling, I know everything about you. You spent 10 years under my roof, sleeping beside me, trusting me. And now. He took another step forward. Now you think you can just walk away? Emily let out a shaky breath, barely audible, but Lana felt it. Matthew saw it too. His eyes softened, not in kindness but in calculation. Emily, sweetheart, he said, his voice dropping into something almost gentle. Come here. Let's not make this harder than it has to be. Emily flinched. Lana shifted, stepping in front of her. You are not touching my daughter. Matthew's smirk curled, but his eyes darkened. Still pretending like you have a choice? He gestured toward the SUV. The back door opened and 2 men stepped out, their expressions blank, trained. Lana's stomach twisted. She had seen those men before. The night of the restaurant. Matthew had brought them then too. Watching. Waiting. Cleaning up his messes. You see, Matthew continued, taking his time, I was hoping you'd be smart about this. But you're making things messy. He clicked his tongue, shaking his head. And you know how I feel about messes. Lana's mind spun. She couldn't outrun them. Not like this. Jared was still inside. If he was even still alive. She had seconds to decide. Matthew sighed dramatically. Fine. If you won't come willingly, he flicked his fingers and the 2 men moved forward. Lana's entire body reacted. She grabbed Emily's arm and yanked her backward, spinning them toward the alley. A gunshot cracked the air. Too close. Emily let out a cry as Lana dragged her behind a rusted dumpster, their breath ragged. Keep running, Lana gasped, her heart hammering. No matter what happens, you keep running. Emily's eyes were wide with fear. Mom? Lana? Matthew's voice boomed through the alley. Lana's chest tightened. No, not like this. Asterisk. She turned, forcing her fear down. Matthew stood at the mouth of the alley, his gun now drawn, his face blank. Colt. You don't win this, he said simply. You never did. Lana clenched her fists. You always underestimated me. Matthew tilted his head. Did I? A sharp pain cracked across her skull. Everything went black. When Lana woke, her head was pounding. Fluorescent lights buzzed above her, too bright, too harsh. Her wrists burned, asterisk tied. Asterisk. Panic slammed into her. She tried to move. She couldn't. Emily. Lana's breath hitched. She twisted, blinking against the blinding lights. A small, dimly lit room. A concrete floor. A single chair. Emily sat in it. Untied. Unharmed. But pale. Too still. Matthew sat beside her, leaning back against a desk, one leg crossed over the other. Relaxed. Morning, darling, he said. Lana's pulse roared in her ears. Emily, she rasped. Her daughter's hands were clenched in her lap. She looked up, her expression, asterisk empty, asterisk. Lana's stomach dropped. You're insane, she whispered, pulling at the restraints. Matthew chuckled. Insane? No. Just practical. He gestured to Emily almost fondly. She's finally starting to see reason. Emily flinched but didn't speak. Lana's blood ran cold. Matthew sighed. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me where you put the files. The bank statements, the recordings, asterisk, everything asterisk. Lana stilled. Matthew leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. You do that, and we all walk away from this. Simple. Lana's breath shook. You're lying. He smiled, mocking. Am I? She held his gaze. Unwavering. She had spent 10 years reading him. Knowing when he was bluffing, when he was dangerous, when he was about to snap. And right now, he was scared. Of what she had. Of what Emily had. Lana swallowed hard. If I tell you, you'll kill us anyway. Matthew sighed, standing. Lana. He stepped closer, crouching beside her chair. That's where you're wrong. His fingers brushed her cheek. Lana's skin crawled. I don't want to kill you, he murmured. That would be inefficient. Her breath caught. Matthew's eyes darkened. I just need you to stop fighting me. Lana's heart pounded. Her fingers curled into fists. And then, a sound. A door creaking open. Matthew stiffened. Emily's head snapped up. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Matthew turned just as the door slammed open. And Jared stepped in. Gun raised. Bleeding but very much alive. Lucky for Lana, Jared said, voice cold. I don't like losing. Matthew froze. Lana's breath rushed out. And in that moment she knew. This wasn't over. But it was about to change everything. The air in the dimly lit room was thick with tension, a suffocating pressure that settled in Lana's chest. The echoes of Jared's gunshots still rang in her ears, mixing with the sharp inhale of her daughter's breath. Matthew lay motionless on the cold concrete floor, his body twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood pooled beneath him, dark and glossy under the flickering fluorescent light. Lana couldn't look away. The man who had tormented her, manipulated her, and preyed on her child was finally gone. Yet she couldn't bring herself to trust it. Jared took a cautious step forward, gun still raised. He nudged Matthew's leg with his boot. No response. Is he? Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. Jared crouched beside the body, pressing 2 fingers to Matthew's throat. A long silence. Then a nod. Dead. Lana exhaled a shaky breath, but relief was distant. Her hands trembled as she reached for Emily, pulling her daughter into her arms. Emily clung to her, her entire body quaking. It's over, Jared muttered, but his tone lacked conviction. Lana's gaze darted to the door. No, not yet. Asterisk. This was Matthew. The man who planned everything. The man who never left loose ends. Asterisk. If he had brought men with him before, how could she believe he came here alone? She turned to Jared. We need to go. Now. Jared's sharp eyes scanned the room. Yeah, we do. They moved fast. Lana grabbed Emily's hand and pulled her toward the exit. Every nerve in her body screamed at her to hurry. They stepped past Matthew's lifeless form, past the wreckage of the battle they had barely survived. And then, a noise. The faintest shuffle. A ragged breath. Lana froze mid-step. Her entire body went rigid. The room that had seemed dead and still just moments ago now felt suffocating. Jared turned sharply, gun swinging back toward the body on the floor. Matthew's fingers twitched. A soft, gurgling chuckle bubbled from his throat. Emily let out a strangled gasp, stumbling backward. Lana shoved her behind her, heart hammering in her chest. Matthew's bloody lips pulled into something twisted. His eyes flickered open, dark with something not human. His voice came out in a broken rasp, thick with pain but sharp as a knife. You really thought it would be that easy? Lana felt the world tilt. Jared didn't hesitate. He fired again. A deafening blast. Matthew's body jerked. His head snapped back. This time there was no mistake. The breath left his body, his limbs finally going still. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Lana's breath came in short, uneven bursts. Her hand was still clenched white-knuckled around Emily's wrist. Jared exhaled slowly, lowering his gun. Now, he muttered. Now it's over. But Lana wasn't so sure. Not yet. The night air was too still as they fled the warehouse. Lana felt like she was being watched. The adrenaline hadn't faded. If anything, it was getting worse. She knew Matthew was dead. But his shadow lingered. Jared led them to a black car parked near the alleyway. He checked his surroundings before unlocking it. Get in, he ordered. Lana hesitated. Something felt wrong. Then she saw it. Across the street, barely visible in the dim glow of the streetlights. A black SUV. Running. Waiting. Her pulse spiked. Jared, she hissed, yanking Emily back. We're not alone. Jared's head snapped up, eyes narrowing as he followed her gaze. His expression darkened. Get in the damn car, he growled, already moving. Lana shoved Emily into the back seat, climbing in after her as Jared slid behind the wheel. The moment the doors slammed shut, the SUV moved. Tires screeched. Lana barely had time to brace herself before Jared floored it. The black SUV followed. Emily let out a shaky breath. Oh my God. Oh my God. Lana grabbed her daughter's hand. It's okay. Stay down. But it wasn't okay. It wasn't over. Not yet. The SUV gained speed behind them, headlights flashing, nearly blinding. Jared swerved sharply, taking a sudden right turn down a side street. Hold on, he barked. Lana did. She held on for dear life. The chase tore through the empty city streets, screeching tires and roaring engines breaking the silence of the night. Lana's heart pounded as she dared a glance out the window. The SUV wasn't just following them. It was hunting them. Jared gritted his teeth. They're not backing off. Lana's mind raced. Who the hell are they? Jared's jaw tightened. Matthew wasn't the only one in on this. His partners, his investors, they won't let this go. Lana's stomach turned to ice. Of course. Matthew had never acted alone. Even in death he had monsters working for him. And now they were coming for her. For Emily. We need to lose them, Lana said, her voice shaking. Jared didn't answer. He just jerked the wheel. The car spun wildly, narrowly dodging an intersection before veering down an abandoned industrial road. The SUV followed relentless. Lana's grip on Emily tightened. Then, gunfire. A sharp, piercing crack. The back windshield shattered. Emily screamed. Jared cursed. Hang on. The world blurred as he took a hard turn, the car skidding dangerously. Another gunshot rang out, but this time, it missed. Lana's breath caught. And then, up ahead. A bridge. Halfway constructed. Incomplete. Jared's gaze flicked to the rearview mirror, then to Lana. A silent question. Lana understood. No more running. They had to end this. Jared pressed the gas. The car rocketed forward. Lana held Emily tight as they barreled toward the unfinished bridge, the SUV still gaining. The second they hit the incline, Jared yanked the emergency brake. The car swerved at the last second. The SUV didn't. It shot past them, tires screeching, momentum too strong to stop. And then, flew. Over the edge. For a second, it hovered, almost frozen in time. Then it plunged. A sickening crash echoed through the night. Then, silence. Lana barely realized she was shaking. She turned to Emily, cupping her face. Are you okay? Emily let out a strangled laugh, half hysterical. I think so. Jared exhaled hard, leaning back against the seat. That, he muttered, was insane. Lana finally let out a breath. It was over. For real this time. No more monsters in the dark. No more Matthew. No more fear. Lana turned, pressing a kiss to Emily's forehead. We're free. To everyone who followed this journey, let this be a reminder. No one has the right to control your life, to take your voice, or to make you feel powerless. Strength comes in many forms, and sometimes, survival itself is the greatest victory. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever faced deception, betrayal, or had to fight for your own justice, share your story in the comments. You're not alone, and your voice matters. And if you enjoyed this gripping, suspenseful journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling stories that keep you on the edge of your seat. Because sometimes real life is the most terrifying and the most inspiring story of all.